I have made a video like this before about my first service for Family Feud style game nights. This one is for my second set of surveys that yielded me the results from my last two videos. Like the first time, I made two surveys, one in English and one in German, but with otherwise identical categories. I posted them in English and German language subreddits respectively, simply because I was curious to see whether the answers I get would vary significantly. And yes, they did. Now, of course, these were not scientific surveys and I will make no such claim. All of this was just done out of casual curiosity, and there were also no questions about the nationality or citizenship of the participants or any other demographics in these surveys to begin with, and it is possible that some people participated in both the English and German survey. So I also won't make any claim that these results here could be representative for any kind of demographic either way. Still, perhaps some people might find some entertainment value in this presentation of the entirety of results I got. This time, I want to begin my comparison one step earlier than last time and show you an overview of how many answers I got for each category in both surveys. To no surprise, there was of course a much larger number of participants in the English survey, with 171 compared to 55 in the German one. But on top of that, the return quota was also significantly different, where on average 79.65% of participants gave an answer to any given category in the English survey, it was only 53.77% on the German side. In some categories, the return quota was quite similar between the two, like in the question for an animal from Europe, whereas in others, it differed wildly, like in the question for a card game you would only ever teach an adult, which was answered by 85.38% of participants in the English survey, but only 5%, about 9% in the German one. The opposite extreme was the question for a product that was often called by a brand name instead of the product name, which was answered by less than 20% of participants in the English survey, but 92.73% on the German side, and was the only category where I got more answers in the German survey than in the English one in absolute numbers. Noticeable was that categories related to animals were overall quite popular. All such on the English side and all but one on the German side had return quotas above average, sometimes even over 90%. The one exception on the German side being the category for animals for South America, that I don't know a reason for why that became such an outlier. The first category was to name a winner of the Eurovision Song Contest, and I already got very different results between the two surveys. ABBA, clearly winning on the English side, was mentioned only twice in the German survey, and this was the only overlap in answers at all. The top answer on the German side was Germany, at about 45% of answers. On the English side, only one participant named a country, Portugal. Name the worst combination of just two items at a supermarket checkout. If I had gone by which items were mentioned the most often, the winning or perhaps losing combination would have been cucumber and condom. But as an explicitly mentioned combination, it was cucumber and lube that won, or lost, with pizza and pineapple a close second. There weren't many answers on the German side, with only two things being mentioned more than once: the combination of fruit and vegetables, and Döner kebab, which isn't even a combination of two items. Neither cucumbers nor condoms were mentioned on the German side, and the only commonality was Coke and Mentos, though on the English side it was always specifically Diet Coke. A word that ends on iron. Judging by the number of participants, this category was quite popular. But because I got 94 different answers on the English side, with the top answer only being mentioned 6 times, and just under 4% of the total number of answers, and thus the scale being so flat, I decided to not include these results in my actual game night videos. Here, the German results would have made for a better reveal, as the top answer, Nation, was mentioned by 36% of those who gave an answer, with Religion on second place coming in at just under 30%. Nation wasn't mentioned only once in the English survey, religion not at all. Name your favorite month. In order to better show the differences, I also added this graph where I put the months in order. Now, at first glance, you might think that this shows the general trend that summer months are more popular in the English survey, but please remember that I didn't ask the participants for country of residence, so it could be possible that I got a significant number of people from, for example, Australia who prefer a cool winter August. On the German side, October scored almost as high as August was on the English side. Does anyone have an idea for why that is? Also, June wasn't mentioned a single time on the German side, and also scored lower than May and July on the English side. What's so bad about June? The last month before the summer holidays, perhaps? Should I have gotten more participants from the Northern Hemisphere after all? Name an underrated scientist. This category is a bit like guessing a target number without going over, as an underrated scientist might also be so little known that they're not mentioned much, if at all, whereas a more famous scientist might just not be seen as underrated by enough people to get many mentions either. Here, Nikola Tesla, known for his work in electricity and eccentricity and who has even a scientific unit of measurement named after him, won this race for the perfect middle ground in the English survey just barely before Jonas Salk, who developed the first polio vaccine and then chose not to patent it to allow for easier global distribution, and Rosalind Franklin, whose work contributed to the discovery of the structure of DNA and viruses, among other things. The top answer on the German side. I mentioned before that I discarded the category for a word ending on ion due to the odd numbers of answers I got. I was tempted to discard the category for an animal from Africa as well, since these looks just so made up with a 5-way tie for the second place, but in the end I did include this one in my game night videos after all. Real random numbers can lead to odd looking results, and while asking people for an answer isn't really a random process, this kind of feels like it shows the same real-world dynamic behind it. The German side had a tie for the top spot between elephants and lions, the latter also being the single top answer on the English side. The category for an animal from Antarctica I did in the end decide to exclude from my game night videos because I was so uncertain on whether I should summarize seals and penguins or not. Penguin by itself was the most mentioned answer, with the emperor penguin mentioned 12 times and some other penguin species mentioned less often. But with seals it was the other way around, with just seal named only once, but several specific seal species mentioned multiple times. And as for the German survey, polar bears do not live in Antarctica, and I wonder if these were 9 genuine mistakes or people intentionally giving a wrong answer. Either way, this did not happen on the English side, and I didn't see that many wrong answers in the other animal categories. In the category for an animal from Asia, the top answers in both surveys were the same, just in reverse order, and in both cases only off by 1 point. On the English side, the panda won over the tiger. What really surprised me was that the red panda wasn't mentioned at all in the English survey, whereas third place on the German side was more to my expectation. Again, the results for the category for an animal from Australia almost made me discard them from my game night videos, as they look so artificial on the English side with 17, 16, 15, 14 and then 13 points successively. But in the end I did include this one as well. The top answer of kangaroo was the same in both surveys. But on the German side it wasn't exactly a close race, with 60% of answers going to kangaroos. Koalas got a silver medal on the German side and bronze on the English, with wombats the other way round. So there's similarities and huge differences all at the same time. If dogs count as wolves, then I did get the same top answer in the category for an animal from Europe. Otherwise the results differ a lot, as the German survey is dominated by domesticated animals. Name an animal from North America was another category where I got so many ties. If I had gotten one last answer for raccoons, I probably would have excluded this category from my game night videos. And this trend for ties even went further down below my limit of never using more than 8 answers in the game night videos, as there was no animal receiving exactly 7 or 6 points, but then there were 4 animals with 5 points, none with 4 and then 2 or 3 points. I also got big differences between the English and German surveys. bison, one of the top answers on the English side, came in at 10.46% here and at 8.33% on the German side, which is at least somewhat comparable. But the cougar, who tied for the top spot, wasn't mentioned at all in the German survey, which in turn was dominated by the alligator at exactly half of the total number of answers received. For animals from South America, I got a really nice scale with only one two-way tie among the answers I included in my game night videos on the English side. The German side was an odd outlier, as this was the only animal-related category where I got a below average number of answers in the German survey. The answers given also differ a lot. The top two answers on the English side, capybara and jaguar, weren't mentioned at all in the German survey. I did decide to exclude the category for an animal living in the ocean, as the scale was just too shallow and I was also again unsure whether I should summarize certain animals or not, especially whales and sharks. Whale by itself was mentioned 9 times, and would thus have been one of the top answers tied with dolphin. But dolphins are whales, and orcas, mentioned 5 times, are dolphins. Sharks were mentioned 6 times, but a tiger shark alone was mentioned 8 times. So I would either have had to discard the generic answers or summarize so much that I would have been left with hardly any variety in answers at all. It is even worse in German side, where fish was the top answer at 45%, but sharks mentioned 4 times are also fish. And according to one participant, whales are also fish. For name and animal sound, I got really nice results on the English side that were lovely to include in my game videos, and yes, I did decide to keep woof separate from bark, even though that would have broken a tie. The top 2 answers in the German survey were different ways to express barking, which was also mentioned twice as well. Yes, in the end I did include a 6-way tie in the category for body parts that some animals have but humans don't. And again, I got quite different answers between the 2 surveys. Tails, feathers, fins, wings, horns, hooves and beaks all appeared in the top 10 on the English side and were mentioned on the German side, which didn't have a huge variety in answers to begin with. But the order was quite different, as the German survey was dominated by the answer tail with 73% of all answers, but was only one of the 6 answers tied for 3rd place in the English survey at less than 6% of all answers. The top answer of wings in the English survey was only mentioned twice on the German side, and antlers, coming in 2nd on the English side, were completely absent in the German survey. Name a food item you would like to try at least once, but never had a chance to. This category received the 2nd lowest number of answers in the English survey, and was also rather low in responses on the German side, where no answer was given more than once. Caviar came out of top in the English survey, and the scaling was also fine. I just left this out due to the low number of participants. If I had run the survey for longer and this had gotten to over 100 responses, I would probably have used it. I did get a higher number of responses for the other food related categories, like for naming a food that you only ever eat with knife and fork. At least on the English side, where 71% of participants gave an answer, whereas it was only 7 answers or 12.73% on the German side. The clear winner on the English survey was the steak, receiving almost as many points as the next 3 answers put together. In the next category, naming a food that tends to spoil before its best before date, the response rate was for once clearly in favor of the German survey, with 51 out of 55 participants, over 90%, giving an answer. Whereas on the English side the total number is almost twice as high, but this means that the return quota was less than 60%. There are both similarities and clear differences in results. Eggs made the top spot on the English side and came in 2nd on the German survey. Bread was in the top 5 on both sides, and strawberries were also mentioned with some frequency in both surveys. But where fish came in 2nd in the English survey, it is completely absent on the German side. The top spot on the German side went to milk, which was mentioned 4 times on the English side. Avocados, 3rd place with 10 points on the English side, were mentioned twice in the German survey. Overall, dairy products appeared more frequently in the German survey, whereas fruits were more prevalent on the English side. When asking for the favorite kind of tea, I did not expect to receive almost 11 times as many answers in the English survey than in the German one. The English survey had results pretty much like I expected, with black tea on top, followed by green tea and herbal and chamomile somewhere higher up as well. What I had neglected to think of, but made a lot of sense to me in hindsight, was the high score for iced tea. Other than water, name a liquid you always want to have at home. While there are clear favorites in the English survey, the German survey had one answer that was chosen by just over half the participants who gave an answer: beer, which was only mentioned twice on the English side. In fact, despite there being less than half as many answers in the German survey, beer was so overwhelming that it got more points here alone than the top answer on the English side, milk, which in turn was only mentioned once on the German side. I included the top 7 answers from the English survey in my game night videos, and other than milk, none of them were even mentioned in the German survey. Name an alternative to Miss, Mr. or Mrs. for a person who is neither male nor female. Over 90% of the points on the English side went to the top 2 answers, dear and some versions of mix. I was surprised hello wasn't much more frequent, as this is as simple as it gets. I will leave the German answers for you to take in your own time. As I mentioned in the beginning, the category for something that you call by a brand name instead of the product term was the only category where I got a higher number of responses in the German survey than the English one, and this small number of responses on the English side was why I didn't include this category in my game night videos. There is also no overlap in the answers at all, unless you count that on both sides there are prominent brands for tissue papers. Name something that has the number of a year in its name, but is not just this number alone. In this category, I did see the top 2 answers in the English survey as the most obvious ones, though I expected them to come in reverse order. After that, I was rather unsure what would be more prominent. Sure, 2001: A Space Odyssey didn't come as a complete surprise, but after all, it is a rather old movie, so I would not have guessed it would come in third. And its sequel was also mentioned twice. The year 1812 made it into the game night videos with 2 different items. On the German side, there were only 18 answers, and half of them were really just year numbers. When it comes to naming a military rank, commissioned officers seem to be the most prominent overall. The top 2 answers in both surveys were the same, or at least sort of, even if in reverse order. In the English survey, Captain wins over General, whereas the General won over the Hauptmann on the German side. And as I said, sort of, because the German rank of Hauptmann is the equivalent for a captain, but only regarding army ranks. The equivalent for a naval captain would be Kapitän, which to my surprise wasn't mentioned at all. Name something that you could do at home but shouldn't. Now, as you can see, I summarized several things related to fire, but left out smoking and fireworks because I saw these as distinctively different enough to warrant their own categories. As well, yes, playing with fire, starting a fire, using a flamethrower, smoking and fireworks could all lead to a house fire. Smoking usually only involves an open flame for a short moment of time and is more an issue in using a psychoactive substance and inhalation of smoke that is related to health issues like lung cancer. And fireworks are also distinct in very often involving loud noise, which regular fire not necessarily causes. And noise pollution might also be the reason why dancing and singing tie for the top spot in the English survey. The German survey, on the other hand, although with so few answers given, I'm hesitant to even point this out, had cleaning and cooking at the top. And the same category, just for things you could but shouldn't do in public. Weirdly, dancing and singing tied here as well in the English survey, but were beaten to the top spot by peeing. And some other bodily functions or body-related activities were mentioned with some prevalence in this category as well. The German survey only got 6 answers, and nothing was mentioned more than once. Name a movie sequel that was better than the original. And I gave beautiful results. At least in the English survey, where I got a total of 141 answers, while in German, I only got 8. 2 Sylvester Stallone movies tied, 2 James Cameron movies were in the top ranks, and both Star Wars and Star Trek in between. Then a movie remake or reboot that was better than the original, and again really great results. I was surprised The Thing would score so high, and expected The Lord of the Rings to come out on top, which here only barely beat Scarface to the silver medal. Who should be the next James Bond? Now, I haven't seen many recent movies, so I really wasn't exactly well informed regarding current acting talent, and I had absolutely no preconceived notion of how this could possibly turn out. I have to admit that I hardly recognize any of the names put forward by the participants of this survey. And I guess this list not only reflects what actor the participants want, but also what they expect from the next series of James Bond movies. For example, when George Lazenby was to replace Sean Connery, they picked someone unknown and relatively young at 30 years to represent a brand new secret agent. But when Roger Moore was picked, he was already 45, not only the oldest James Bond actor at the beginning of the tenure, but also the oldest actor in the role at all, as he was born in 1927, whereas Sean Connery had been born in 1930, representing an older, experienced agent who was already well established. With Daniel Craig, the producers had gone back to the idea of a fresh agent who even only becomes a 00 in the pre-title sequence of his first outing as the character. The top answer in the service was Idris Elba, who is 53 years old right now. A great actor, but he wouldn't be the choice to represent another fresh agent. I could well see him as an experienced senior agent of MI6 who is mentoring a new James Bond and perhaps even becoming the new M by the second or third movie of a new series. But if people want Elba as James Bond himself, maybe they don't want a new origin story to be told. Henry Cavill at 43 and Richard Madden at 40 would be close in age to Timothy Dalton and Pierce Brosnan at their respective first James Bond movies, which again were portrayals as already experienced agents, not newcomers. Reggie-Jean Page is not much younger at 38, but this would be the same age as Daniel Craig in Casino Royale, where they did opt for the origin story. Tom Hardy is 48 and Tom Hiddleston 45, as old or older than Roger Moore during his first movie. It is only when we get to Austin Butler and Jack Lowden that we reach actors in their mid-30s within this list that would be prime choices for a fresh start with new origin story. While it didn't get many answers in the German survey, there was one name that was put forward there more than any other: Til Schweiger, who is 62 already. And sorry for getting derailed so much on this particular topic. Name a card game you would teach elementary school children. I'm not much of a card player myself, but I really loved the top answer in the English survey, even if I expected Uno to win in both surveys, which got a silver medal in the English survey and was mentioned twice in the German one, where memory wasn't mentioned at all. Instead, the top answer on the German side was the top answer in the English survey for the next category. Name a card game you would only ever teach an adult. Cards Against Humanity, even beating poker by 2 points. I didn't even think this particular card game was this well known, and thus while I could have imagined being named a couple of times, I was really surprised for it to come out so strong. Name a type of ship, and unlike in history, here battleships beat the aircraft carriers. I also liked the frequent nominations to spaceships and airships, which I did not expect to score so well. In the case of spaceships, even tying for the first place with the battleship. Submarines also scored higher than I would have expected. Cruisers, destroyers, oil tanks and container ships are higher up where I expected these. On the German side, I got surprisingly few answers. I certainly would not have guessed that less than barely more than 40% of participants would provide an answer to this category, where the quota was more than twice as high on the English side. Name something that usually doesn't happen every year. The top answer of February 29th or a leap year was to be expected, and other prime candidates like eclipses and the Olympics were among the top answers as well. Pandemic coming in on 4th place also shouldn't be a surprise since it was still so recent. On the German side though, where I at least got a return quota of 65%, which for German survey as a whole was above average, the top answer by far was the Soccer World Championship. Name the country with the most beautiful flag. And once more I got results so different as if I had asked people from 2 different planets. The top answer on the English side was Canada, which isn't to be found on the German side at all. And Germany, getting more than 2/3 of the points on the German side, doesn't appear on the English side. In fact, the only 2 countries appearing on both sides are Panama and Thailand. Also, have you ever heard of a document called Good Flag, Bad Flag? If not, it's a compilation about vexillology that presents 5 basic rules for good flag design, one of which is to stick to 2 or 3 basic colors. The flag of South Africa uses 6 and still got a silver medal in this category. Name something that's free. Now, this was the most one-sided category I had, and obviously in hindsight I should have gone with other than air. Name something that's free. As of 126 participants who gave an answer in this category, 99 wrote in air.